Imagine. Daniel Barnes wrote the character well, so he gets to do things. Ian Flynn writes the character like shit, so he doesn't get to do things. That's the, like, revelation I came to. Where, like, Ian Flynn had that statement where, like, he gets more feedback about Gemerald and Shadow than he does about Sonic and Eggman.
Shadow is weird in that of all the Sonic characters, he has had the most notes of anybody, bar none. I mean, the Deadly Six, we got some very specific direction here and there. Some notes occasionally on Cream. We had a bit of a back and forth over what Knuckles would do here in the current storyline and coming issues. But Shadow, for whatever reason, is under tighter scrutiny, it feels like, than anybody else. It's weird. But there is a moment that I'm hoping will get approved. We'll see. I really can't predict. It's become a very, very tricky balancing act. I thought I had gotten things figured out in the two-parter. Well, it's more of a one-parter because Shadow only appears at the end of the one issue. He and Sonic actually interact in the following one when they're out in Windmill Village. I thought I had figured out what Sega wants from the character now, but I guess if you look at what very little we see in Forces and the far more confrontational single note we got in Team Racing, I think that's the direction they want to go now. So it's the same as it ever was. I'll do what I can with what I'm given. We had to, in the original Shadow and Sonic fight back in the Mr. Tinker stuff, we had to cut 90% of Shadow's dialogue because he apparently just doesn't talk to Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a conversationalist. He doesn't debate. He doesn't speak his mind. He doesn't tell people his opinions. He just does. Can you hear the fatigue in my voice?
And the way we kind of interpreted that was he has more creative freedom with Sonic and Eggman compared to Shadow and Gemerald. But I realized what it is, like, I realized you have to take it a different way. It's not that these characters have more restrictions and guidelines compared to these other characters. What's happening is Ian Flynn sucks at writing some characters more than other characters. So he writes Shadow in the worst fucking way possible because he's dog shit and doesn't understand the guy's character. And so he gets more feedback notes about Shadow compared to other characters. Not because Sega is more strict about Shadow, but because people don't know how to fucking write Shadow. Like, yeah, if you send in draft after draft after draft after draft where you keep fucking up Shadow's character, then yeah, all of the feedback notes you get are gonna be about Shadow. That's not because they're more strict about Shadow than they are any other character. If you were fucking all the other characters up just as much as you're fucking up Shadow, you get just as many feedback notes about those characters as you're getting about Shadow. If he was writing Shadow perfectly, Sega wouldn't send any feedback about him. If he was writing Sonic badly, he'd get feedback about how he's writing Sonic instead. It was like a revelation. Like, it's not that Sega has mandates about some characters more so that, like, the list of what you're allowed to do with Shadow, the list is longer for Shadow than other characters. No, the problem is, Shadow's a nuanced and complicated character, and people keep fucking him up by trying to turn him into a joke, and trying to turn him into an edgelord, and trying to turn him into this and that. They're trying to turn him into Sasuke Uchiha, or Vegeta, and Sega's like, no, that's not his character. Stop fucking him up. And, like, take this post on Tumblr from Evan Stanley. Like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Look at the words she uses. Look at the way she expresses this. I do my best to help make him quote-unquote better. By the way, read my webcomic. These fucking assholes, they're all the same, and that's why they get Sega wrapping their knuckles with a ruler when it comes to Shadow. They want to make Shadow into what they want him to be instead of writing him correctly. Of course, all the feedback Sega sends is gonna be about Shadow more so than any other character, because Shadow is the one these people can't fucking write properly, because they want to make him into their shitty DeviantArt webcomic. That's literally what she said. I'm not allowed to write Shadow the way I want. I have to write him the way Sega wants. All these interviews are just idiots bitching that they tried to write Shadow like shit and big mean Sega wouldn't let them. Oh, we wanted to write Shadow as a bumbling yuckster like everyone else in this godforsaken show, but Sega said no, Shadow's not a joke-cracking fuckboy. Don't write Shadow wrong. The way Sega wants him portrayed is a limitation, and they have to work within it to make him better. I can only verbalize the finger quotes so much. They think their Shadow is better. Evan Stanley literally used the words, I still do my best to make it better. She thinks her Shadow is better, and that writing Shadow in character, the way Sega wants him written, is a limitation that they have to work within to showcase his best side. They can't stand that Sega knows their own damn character better than they do, and is trying to get them to write him in a way that is contrary to what they want in how they write Shadow. They want Shadow to be their shitty DeviantArt webcomic. They want Shadow to be Archie Sonic. They want Shadow to be a joke-cracking yuckster. They want Shadow to be Sasuke Uchiha. None of them are saying, Sega says the way Shadow was written is correct, and I appreciate having my false, wrong-headed characterization corrected. None of them are acknowledging that what Sega wants for the character is accurate, and Sega correcting them is Sega telling them to fix wrong character. Like, they're fucking up the character. Sega says, hey, fix that. No, they see it as, no, my Shadow is correct. Fuck you, Sega, for telling me what to do. They think Sega's Shadow is wrong, and they just have to grin and bear it. They all think they know Shadow better, and they just take what opportunities they can to sneak their Shadow in under Sega's nose. If you just wrote Shadow correctly, they wouldn't have any feedback to send about it. Take, for example, once again, my dearly beloved Caleb Goellner over here. I don't know how to pronounce that last name. I'm very sorry. Take his Team Sonic Racing comic that he did. In the special features for that comic, they explain, like, the writing process behind how they make the comics. The comic started, as most comics do, with selecting a writer and having him pitch the story. Caleb stepped in and knocked it out of the park. The story he pitched was almost exactly what ended up being written and drawn. And they give an example of what, like, the script he wrote looked like. The script moves from Caleb to the editorial team, who read it and correct any punctuation or spelling errors and give him notes on ways to improve the story. Once it clears their high bar, it moves to Sega for approval. Fortunately, Caleb is such a talented writer that both editorial and Sega had practically no notes. So Caleb Goellner, I'm so sorry I'm not pronouncing that name right, by the way. So Caleb wrote a Sonic comic that did heavily feature Shadow the Hedgehog in it, by the way, and he got practically no notes from Sega. Ian Flynn writes a comic, and it gets nothing but feedback notes telling him to stop fucking it up from Sega. I think I'm understanding the common denominator here. The common denominator does not appear to be that Sega has stringent and strict stipulations about how you're allowed to write Shadow. It's just that Sega understands how their own characters should be written, and when you don't write those characters correctly, they tell you to fix it. It doesn't matter which character it is. If you fuck that character up, they're going to tell you to fix it. And people just fuck up Shadow more often. The Sonic Boom writers fucked up with Shadow. The Sonic Prime writers fuck up with Shadow. Ian Flynn doesn't understand how to write any of these fucking characters, let alone Shadow. So yeah, I don't know what a good comparison is. But like, just... yeah, all the feedback notes that Sega sends in are about Shadow because people keep fucking Shadow up. If they wrote Shadow correctly, they wouldn't have any feedback notes to send in. Caleb managed to write Shadow correctly, so Sega had practically no notes for him. There's the difference. What's the difference? Oh, you just gotta be a good fucking writer. Imagine the very concept. Maybe if you're a good writer, Sega will allow you to depict Sonic crying. All you gotta do is be a good writer. I know, that's a lot to ask.